Hello, welcome back to another fragrance apprentice video. You know, I was somewhat nervous coming back outside and doing an on-location fragrance apprentice video, but then a man started cutting his grass pretty much around the same time that we hit record, and it all started flooding back to me. I remember the good old days, whenever you try to do something outside, then somebody just starts mowing the grass. So this is quite a nostalgic event for me. Anyway, I have been doing I've been collecting fragrances, for 15 years, and I've been doing a YouTube channel for 11 years. But to make the algorithm, trendy and understand what I was trying to say with this video, we've done 10 fragrances after 10 years of collecting. So in this video, I'll be talking about the fragrances that mean the most to me, the fragrances that emotionally really, really resonate with me, and the fragrances that really, really do kind of connect with me. It's going to be a bit of a roller coaster of emotions. You already know what the last fragrance is going to be on this list, and I'd ask that you stick around for that, because I need to talk to you about the last fragrance on this list. For many of you who have, done the rounds with this, you're going to recognize quite a few of these fragrances. So my promise to you is this: Season 7 is going to be starting on the 5th of May, 2025. This is kind of like a collection of all of the fragrances that I've talked about previously, and it's me sort of like closing the chapter on them. One of the big things that I want to do with the upcoming season is I really want to talk about brand new fragrances that you've never heard me talk about. I'd like to go into discovering brand new fragrances that nobody else has. And that brings me to the first fragrance on this list. The first fragrance is Citiva, and nothing to me says spring more than Citiva. Back in the day when I first started, one of the great magical things about, starting with fragrances and you don't know the rules and you don't know the lingo and you don't know anything, is that you're not going to be as much of a snob. And back in the day, 10 years ago, when I, first bought this fragrance, clones and all that kind of stuff was not socially acceptable. Cloning houses or fragrances that made duplicates of popular fragrances were about as socially acceptable as shitting in public. Now, apparently in the fragrance community, shitting everywhere is completely socially acceptable. Shitting up the walls, shitting on buildings, shitting on the industry from a great height, all fully acceptable now. I mean, back then, you had to hide that you were a clone company. You didn't have Alexandria and Dior coming in and basically saying, oh yeah, we're a clone company and we're heavily proud of it. You had to sort of get creative with it. And Duetto was definitely a clone company. They cloned mostly Tom Ford fragrances. But they had to, be careful. They wouldn't mention it. They didn't want to, sort of advertise that. Golden Boy was very much a Tuscan leather clone, but then again, lots of Tuscan leather clones were happening, but again, you'd have to be creative about it. You have to change it somewhat. And Citiva here is a clone of Grey Vetiver by Tom Ford. Now, I didn't know that. I'd never smelt Grey Vetiver, and I have to say, when I smelt Grey Vetiver after this, it was kind of a letdown, really. This is a very, very bold and punchy fragrance. Grey Vetiver is a very watery, light fragrance, and you'd think it'd be the other way around. You'd think the clone would be a watered-down version of the original source material, but this is a bigger, beefier, fuller-bodied version of the, watery, meek, tepid Grey Vetiver. I don't want to sort of go into full meme territory of, the Chad Citiva by Duetto versus the Virgin Grey Vetiver by Tom Ford. But if you were to put that sort of meme kind of graph down, I think that Citiva would win. This to me reminds me so much of spring. And this is one of the fragrances on here that is hard to smell. It's tough to smell because of the emotions that it evokes. This reminds me of my early 20s. This reminds me of boat trips, canals. One of my personal dreams in life that isn't, anything to do with filmmaking or creativity is to own a narrowboat. I just absolutely love them, and I think that you could see the best of Britain with narrowboats. This is a green, vetiver-y, soapy, citrusy, sugary, amazing fragrance, and to me it utilises both the greenness and the root of the vetiver. You may have heard me speak before that vetiver kind of has two components: the green leafy grass and the really, really harsh, brutish root And different vetiver fragrances use the different components of those two things. Citiva, like Grey Vetiver, uses both, but it really, really ups the rooty, earthy, soil-like smell. And this is just a very, very emotional fragrance to me. You know, I just remember a lot of good times. And unfortunately, you know, Duetto went under, despite my best efforts. And then this is one of the things I want to talk about. I discovered Duetto, really, because, and I wanted to help them. You know, I thought that Citiva was amazing. I thought that Golden Boy was amazing, because I was looking for new fragrance companies, new fragrance houses that the regular, you know, fragrance reviewers weren't talking about. And so I searched far and wide, and I found Duetto, and Duetto was, you know, a fragrance company that I felt as though I tried to popularise. But, yeah, they got a good recommendation from me, and now they're a completely defunct company. So, you know, I guess that goes to show what the Fragrance Apprentice's recommendation can go towards you. If any of you are thinking of sponsoring me, that's probably a tale that you should be wary of. But Citiva by Duetto, an amazing fragrance. Really, to me, it was the beginning of my fragrance recommending career, where I was recommending fragrances. And I would love to do that more in season 7. I want to find, you know, those hidden gems, those hidden gem fragrances that aren't being talked about. But you've got to promise me that you know, if that's what you want, then if you see me talking about a fragrance that you've not really heard of, you've got to click on that video. Because with the algorithm and everything like that, and the state of the fragrance landscape, you know, people only will click on, you know, fragrances that they've heard of, or the brand new Sauvage, or the brand new 1 million, or everything like that. With me, you know, if you want me to talk about new fragrances, well, you've got to be reasonable on that deal and hold up your end of the bargain. So if you see me over the next few months talking about fragrances you've never heard of, let me tell you something, the only reason why I'm talking about them is because I feel as though they're worth your time. Okay, so next one, I guess, is reasonably recent in my fragrance world. You know, I only discovered this about 3-4 years ago, and to me, I guess that's still considered new, just because of the relativity of how long I've been doing this. But Monoasis by Motif, Olfactif, to me is an absolutely astonishing fragrance. In fact, these two fragrances I should probably talk about together and sell them. This is Kiste by Slumberhouse. You know, these two fragrances have got something in common with my journey. So, you know, Citiva and other fragrances a couple of other fragrances I've been talking about on this journey, they were definitely fragrances that I really, really enjoyed the smell of and wanted to wear and thought, oh, these smell great. But Kiste by Slumberhouse, which you can see I literally don't have much of this left. This was the first time that I smelled a fragrance and thought, oh my goodness, that's not just smelling good, that's art. And what's complicated here, ironically, is that Slumberhouse's Kiste is actually a very simple fragrance. There's not really a lot going on here, really, but it's the quality of what's going on rather than the quantity of what's going on. It uses peach, honey, and hay. So it's basically the smell of an autumn in Georgia. That was the inspiration behind it. That's what they intended to do, or that's what Josh Lobb intended to do. But it's the level of execution, the quality of execution here, that makes this amazing. It's probably the most mainstream offering. You know, I've smelled all of them. To me, Slumberhouse are the Boards of Canada of fragrances. They have a small fan base. They're a small, you know, niche operation for niche weirdos who are really, really into what they do. And they don't really release a lot. They're not very good with PR. They don't really want a mainstream hit. They just want to do what they do, and the mainstream leaves them alone. And so I'm a huge Boards of Canada fan, as probably some of you have figured out, and I'm a huge Slumberhouse fan. I keep them in sort of the same regard as each other. And Kiste is kind of like the campfire head phase, if you will, of their collection, whereas things like Jiki or Norn or they're like the more underground, unusual fragrances because they have such character. But Kiste was a great way of introducing me into, this is actually an art form. This isn't just like, you know, you can smell great. This is actually like some serious shit is going on here. And so that kind of propelled me forward. I think that if there was no Kiste, there probably wouldn't be, me still doing this here today. Then it kind of gave me the permission slip of, you can go a bit weird with, the way that you present fragrance reviews as well. Now, I lost my faith a little bit along the way because I kept smelling mainstream hit after mainstream hit, and I was like, I've kind of smelt everything now, like everything is just a kind of a rendition and a repeat of everything else. But then I smelt Monoasis by Motif Olfactif, and I was like, all right, yeah, this is still an art form. It's just that people don't use it as an art form as much as they should. One of the notes that I picked up out of this recently is cinnamon, but this is a huge, lavender plantation, right? It is a very, very spicy, aromatic smell. It smells like the great outdoors, and it also has a lot of lavender, quite a chunky bit of cinnamon, almost a little bit of a licoricey smell, but it smells like a fresh lavender field. Some of you, I can imagine, would be waiting for Vulgari Man in Black or, Boss the Scent Absolute or Boss the Scent Private Accord, which are all great fragrances. But to me, this is kind of I wanted to showcase here, the fragrances that really, truly blew me away. The fragrances that I felt had either huge imprints on my journey or ones that I felt were huge risks that were taken. And I loved them. And this one here is Xerjoff 400. This one is an absolutely astonishing fragrance. And I just want to say here, as we go along, one of the things that I realized making this video is I really hate top 10 lists. I know what you're going to say, oh, don't we all? But I mean in the way of, this is, I've been doing this for, if you include collecting and everything like that, I've been doing this for 15 years. I bought Diesel on the Brave, I think in 2009 or something. I've been doing this so that's 16 years. It is now getting harder and harder and harder for me to take all my fragrances and just restrict them to 10. You know what I mean? I love fragrances. And, this is kind of like a thing more for you of, well, if I boil it down, then, this is the great... But I've smelled... This list should be 50 fragrances long, really. But I go on a lot as well, so there's also that to consider. You don't want to be here all day, and neither do I. But it's getting harder and harder for me to just to say, oh, actually, here are the 10 fragrances that I really love. When top 10s, or trying to consolidate all my thoughts and feelings about fragrances, which I've had so many experiences with, down to top 10, then it's it's just stressful, But Xerjoff 400, this is, to me, the colour purple in its most traditional sense. I really love this fragrance. And it's so magisterial and so regal and so opulent and yet so playful that it reminds me just kind of the colour purple. And, the colour purple back in the day, back in the Middle Ages, was a very, very rare thing to be able to have on your clothes. Purple dyes were very, very difficult to manufacture and very costly and very expensive. So therefore, anybody who could wear purple, was immediately singled out in the eyes of many as somebody who had wealth, as somebody who was a king, somebody who was a monarch. And so purple becomes kind of mythologized in human history as a very rare commodity. But also I think that a lot of those people, and especially the monarchs of the day, were very eccentric, ruthless, mad people who were a little bit bonkers and a little bit nuts. And to me, that's what Xerjoff 400 is. It's prestigious, eccentric, and bonkers. Which is what I tell myself that I am every day in the mirror at 5 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. So Xerjoff 400, to me, I've been wearing this all winter, and it made me realise I think this is probably my favourite winter fragrance of all time. Just for the absolute sort of laudity of it, Back in the day, the kids would say, oh, that's so extra, that's quite extra. Xerjoff 400 is extra. Xerjoff generally are an extra, company that's completely filled with extra kind of nonsense, and their whole thing is completely over-the-top luxury. And I wish that I could, you know, buy more of their fragrances or at least get their fragrances for free. But unfortunately, I don't date anybody from Xerjoff, so I can't do that. Unlike other great influencers in the fragrance world. Anyway, Xerjoff 400 is absolutely a beautiful, wonderful, eccentric fragrance. It reminds me of... I could just imagine the person, you know, it's just a fragrance that's just filled with luxury and filled with eccentricity and kind of like it's kind of like a very, very, like a toffee kind of patchouli-esque incense stick. It actually reminds me a little bit of dragon's blood, the incensed flavour, if you will, dragon's blood. It's that kind of thing. And I love it to bits, and I've worn it so much this winter. So now we come to Burlington 1819, and you know, I think that if I'm honest, I like this as much as Millésime Impériale, but I just can't admit it to myself. If I'm honest, if I was to get Millésime Impériale out, which I will be doing soon, and I compared the two, I'd probably still be, you know, faithful to Millésime Impériale. But Burlington 1819, I'm going to spray this one. You know, when I first smelt it, I think there's a video of me first smelling it for the first time. I think Chris introduced me to this over from Fragmental, but there's this artist, this music artist, artist called Blue Jay Mix, right? I just want to make this point. Blue Jay Mix. Very underappreciated, very, very underrepresented artist. If you like the artist Pogo, you know, where he takes video games and films and things like that and he splices them up and he makes remixes out of them, you'll probably like Blue Jay Mix, and it's all, you know, filled with nostalgia and all that kind of thing. When I first heard Blue Jay Mix, and I continued to hear Blue Jay Mix's stuff, I was like, it's as if this guy has taken all of the chords, all of the sounds, and all of the sort of rhythmic, clever, sampling, whatever, shtick that I like, and just turned it into one genre, and it's kind of like a cheat code. And that's what I feel with Burlington 1819. By the way, if you're a fan of pogo or chill out music or, you know, chill out electronica, or you like, you know, this kind of stuff that I like, Bortacada, Machine Drum, Lemon Jelly, those kinds of artists, I'd highly recommend Blue Jay Mix, by the way. But that is what Burlington 1819, it takes all of the different things that I really like. Citruses, like really, really nice, real, serene, organic citruses, lemon, orange, bit of lime, bit of sugar, ethereal kind of like aldehyde nonsense, bit of vanilla. You smash that all up together, you create basically a cheat code for me and for my olfactive system. That's what Burlington 1819 is as well. But it does also add something as well. There's also a bit of like a lemongrass kind of smell in here. There is like a really small, like herby, lemongrassy, green vetiver thing in here that's just done so well. And I'm a sucker for that. And it's very expensive. Very expensive. Yeah, it's a fragrance for the 1%. It's a fragrance that's completely based around luxury and based around all that kind of thing. And so many fragrances don't hit that mark anymore as much as they should. I think that Creed is... I feel now that Creed is basically luxury cosplay, if you will. And they're not really that luxurious at all, but they have the clout to kind of still push that image. But Roja Dove, especially with stuff like this is luxury. This is the high end of fragrances. So going with that, we've got this, and took the cellophane off of this. In fact, I'm just going to openly admit this to you. I recorded this video 3 days ago, and then I checked my camera, and it had only recorded 10 minutes. So I've already opened this in camera, and I don't have the footage of that. So luckily, I know that this is recording, so that's great. So this is L'Instant de Guerlain Eau Extreme. It is not the black-rimmed one, but it's, look, this is absolutely perfect. This is a perfect fragrance. I love the old black-stemmed one that has the cocoa and the chocolate. Haven't smelt the new one. I know I should, right, because I'm an influencer or whatever the hell it is, but I can't bring myself to it. I can't do it, because what if it sucks? It really freaks me out, it really scares me. Someone's going to have to take me into like Harvey Nichols or Guerlain or whatever and hold my hand whilst I smell the new Lindt de Guerlain. So, that's how you do it, ladies and gentlemen. I missed this. Maybe I needed a year off. You know what I mean? Just to take some perspective. It's so beautiful. The chocolate, the cacao, with this incredible lemon, citrus zest. I've never smelt that in anything. Well, I have, actually. You know, I've smelt it with Pardon, kind of Cocorico, tried and failed. But this is a knife's edge. This is a tightrope. On the one side is the citrusy lemon bergamot. The other is this gravelly, dark chocolate with earth, like freshly topsoil type shit. And that just smells like a man. You know, I have so many great memories with this. I went to Romania for the first time wearing this, in Bucharest. That's actually my main memory that I have with this. Funny thing that, isn't it, is you never forget your first. You know, not to sound coy or anything, but like, you know, with Citiva, it reminds me of the boat trips that I had when I was younger, in my early 20s. I've had many memories with Citiva since then. Went to London last year, went to the BBC, got shown around the BBC, which was really, really cool. Was wearing Citiva all the time. I smell Citiva now, doesn't remind me of London, doesn't remind me of the BBC tour, reminds me of earlier back. You know, and this, I think that Lindt de Guerlain Eau Extreme, the one with the black stem, that reminds me of like my early 20s as well, and especially when I wear it on my birthday. But this has got enough of a difference to where it reminds me of a really random trip to Romania I took. You know, it's got the maturity that I crave and love from the original version, but it's got a youthful, zesty, playful attitude as well. But I mean, if you just want a fragrance for, you know, wearing a suit and tie and just like full-on business mode, it's just like, this fragrance smells like it owns land. It's the best way I can put it. It smells like it's a landlord. Well, I don't know, a landlord, I don't know, that's not the best reputation. But this guy owns a few boats, you know what I mean, and a few fucking farms, and a couple houses, you know what I mean? And he's just watching the house prices go through the roof and loving every second of it. But this is a fragrance that smells like it owns land, in Italy or something. Or the French Riviera. You know, he owns a few houses in the French Riviera. Absolute boss mode type fragrance, and you know, a fragrance that really means a lot to me. I've gone through 2 bottles of it, of this version of it. This is my third and final, and makes me upset, really does. But hopefully, I'll just treat it with the respect that it deserves as I wear it. Next fragrance is Angel Share by Killian. You know, a funny thing about this fragrance is that, you know, I wore this a lot when I was moving to Edinburgh, or planning to move to Edinburgh, and I would use it as sort of like a psychological anchor to think to myself, right, I really, really want to wear this because it'll remind me of whiskey and it'll remind me of Edinburgh, and I'll move to Edinburgh. Since I've moved to Edinburgh, I have not worn this fragrance really on a regular basis at all. I have worn it to certain events. I'm a member of the Scotch Single Malt Whisky Society, and I'll wear it to events or things like that with this. But on a regular basis, me and this fragrance aren't as close to one another as we once were. And I think it's because I've done it. You know what I mean? Like, I've done it. I've moved to Edinburgh. And so therefore, not like it's lost its purpose, but, you know, I found what I was looking for rather than just constantly seeking it out. But it's a beautiful, beautiful fragrance. It reminds me very much of Bunnahabhain fragrances. Bunnahabhain fragrances, I've never tasted the Bunnahabhain fragrance that I've not liked. They've got a really specific kind of like vanilla, raisiny kind of palette, which is very similar to Angel Share. It's like Christmas cake, vanilla-y, Christmassy things. You know, raisins, Christmas cake, that vanilla, sweets, treats, that kind of thing. stuff that your grandma would give you at Christmas. Very hard to make a fragrance that smells like whiskey, but as we'll get to. But this one's just fantastic, and I love it. So I'm going to put these two together. This is Ultra Zest and Pure Malt. Now, out of the two, I really do appreciate Ultra Zest more these days, because I really think it's one of one. Like, people have talked about, oh, you know, there's Ultra Red Man and there's Clinique Happy, and you know, it's not that unique. But I'm very nervous to spray this because I haven't got a lot left of it. But I do want to, because I really want to talk about what it is. There is like an orange vanilla sponge cake here, and it's like Sunny D. Anybody remember Sunny D? I think they still do it, don't they? But it got banned in here in the UK for a period of time. Sunny D meets a vanilla sponge cake that has like freshly baked, because it's really crazy, because it's got this really centered warmth and gravity to it. You know, like Clinique, Happy by Clinique, or Be Happy by Clinique. That's great, but it's very sunshine in a bottle, and that's great. But this has got this real vanilla-y, spongy, grainy, bread-like warmth. And it's as if it's a really happy human being that gives you a hug, you know, big, warm hug, then sits you down and says, okay, let's talk about the meaning of life. And you're a bit like, hang on a minute, I thought we were chilling. You know, but it's like, no, actually, I really want to talk about some genuinely serious and deep subjects with you. And you're like, oh, I thought we were just like going to have a hug and just, you know, play, you know, drafts or something. So it's a beautiful, beautiful fragrance. Pure Malt is just, you know, I'm running out of this as well. Same kind of vibe. Pure Malt isn't that whiskey-ified, but it's so pleasant, and like caramel and toffee and sweet, vanilla-y warmth. Still an amazing fragrance. It's still a great, great addition to the Angel Men series. I've talked about it so many times, but you know, these two, sadly, you know, you can't find them as much, and I feel as though I'm owning, you know, with some of these, I do own fragrance history, and that's just an incredible thing. Not too many left now. Not too many left. You know, one of my favourite fragrances of all time is Tobacco Vanille, and I was going to talk about it, I was going to add it, but I do feel as though, in my heart of hearts, there is a fragrance that I do prefer over Tobacco Vanille. There's been lots of different variations of Tobacco Vanille, lots of different ideas over it, but to me, I love Tobacco Vanille, but it's very friendly, and it's very Christmassy, and it's, you know, got all those great memories attached to it, and it literally is the pioneer. But for me personally, there is one that pushes that over the edge, and that is Tabac by Zaharoff. Okay, so I think that one of the main biases here is that I had an absolutely astounding holiday in Estonia with Tabac, and I have so many great memories of it. And the first time I went to Estonia, to Tallinn, Estonia, which they were quite bewildered by, actually. They were like, what's a British person doing here in Tallinn, Estonia, and in winter? And I was like, I just Googled it, mate, to be honest. Just Googled great Christmas getaways, and Tallinn, Estonia looked beautiful, and it had the incredible aesthetics that I was really looking forward to do a fragrance apprentice video. But you know, there's lots of Christmas markets I could have chosen. That's really why I was going. But Tallinn was and still is, in my personal opinion, the best one. Please don't launch into a war in the comments about what is the best European Christmas market. Tabac has more this kind of sandpapery smell. This really kind of, it's like a sauna, like wood. It smells like wood in a sauna. And you layer that on some very heady pipe tobacco, and you smooth that out with a really, really like raw vanilla. Tobacco Vanille is absolutely fantastic, but it's so fun and so bubbly and so happy. And the vanilla is really, really upped, and the tobacco to me isn't as strong and isn't as decisive and isn't as forward as it is with Tabac. Tabac, I feel as though it actually lets the tobacco really kind of sing. So Tabac for me is probably my signature winter fragrance. going forward, and Xerjoff 400 is not too far behind it either at all, but these are the big players in my winter scheme, in my winter fragrances these days. So we're going to go back to spring and summer now, and that's Eau de Merveilles. Now, Eau de Merveilles, I think comparatively to something like, Lidge or Ultra Zest or, even Monoasis, it's pretty tame. What Eau de Merveilles gave to me was, just wearing it on the skin is just something else. The first time I wore Eau de Merveilles, I just thought it was an absolute banger, and, it's definitely got that Tour Hermes kind of, or Hermes DNA, but the thing that I really, really enjoy is that it's just such a balanced, smell. And even though it's a woman's fragrance, and I know that some people have really, really not enjoyed that. They've not enjoyed, the idea of wearing a woman's fragrance. And I have to remind people that when you do wear a woman's fragrance, there isn't automatically a sign, like a huge neon sign that suddenly comes up above you when you walk in public that says, I'm wearing a women's fragrance. People don't know. Okay, so this is just the fizzy, watery, orange smell that is just so good, and it's very sparkly. There's also a little bit of a licorice kind of undertone, but the balance is amazing, and it reminds me a little bit of the dry down of Aventus. It's like an orangey dry down of Aventus, but there is, there's no top. And look, this isn't like a conversation about, gender or, anything like that. It really isn't. It's more just a case of, like, it's a freaking fragrance, you know what I mean? It's, it's not, it's just all marketing. You can wear what you want. So, yeah, like, for me, this is that musky, mossy smell with an orange fizziness. And it just grabs me, it just absolutely freaking grabs me, and I love it. And I still recommend it to this day, and I think it is up there with one of the best fragrances I've ever smelled. Prada Amber, right? I want to give you a great metaphor with this, right? There's a film called, I think it's Speak No Evil. Speak No Evil. The Danish version of it, the original version of it, absolute masterclass of a film. Absolute masterclass. But no, I'll hold this whilst I talk about this. Masterclass of a film. An ending that I think some people really didn't like, and I didn't like particularly. I didn't find it particularly comfortable to watch. But I thought, all right, well, but that's the point. That's the point of what the film is trying to say. Then they made an American version with James McAvoy. They slapped James McAvoy on it and said, "Hello, you know who James McAvoy is. This is an American horror film," and completely cut the balls off of the film. And actually, the entire film is basically trying to say the point of the original film, which is essentially don't. I mean, it's open to interpretation, but don't let people push you. Don't let people tell you who you are. Don't let people take advantage of you. But the original Danish version, didn't say that. It just let you come to that conclusion. But the American version just got a broomstick or a baseball and just hit you over the head with, like, the point. In fact, I think there is even a scene in that film where the woman's like, "Oh my God, they're taking advantage of us." And I'm like, Jesus Christ, come on, give the audience a little bit more respect. Anyway, Prada Amber in this example is the original. Prada L'Homme, which Jeremy got his hands on and said, "Hey, look at this, guys," that is the Americanized version. Prada Amber to me is a soft, feminine, floral amber fragrance that is kind of open to interpretation, even though it's a men's fragrance, by the way. And the fragrance is completely open to you. It's soapy, it's floral, it's quite bright and nostalgic, and has a bit of like a linen dryer sheet kind of smell. It smells like basically freshly washed clothing that's hung up on the line. And it's great. And it's got a lot to it, and yet it's quite subtle at the same time. Prada L'Homme just went, this is soap. And it's nice, and it's man, and that's it. Please buy us. well, please buy it. And it feels like it was amber, but completely stripped for parts and completely sort of devoid of any interpretation, and just, fit solely to sell bottles and to be mainstream. Now, obviously, that's how business works. You don't have to tell me that, but I think that amber's more fun, being the frickin' snob that I am. But I genuinely love this fragrance. I genuinely think it's got so much to say. I think it's so clean and so... it's perfect spring fragrance. Floral, clean, ambery, warm, uplifting, gentle. That's what it feels like to me. Whereas L'Homme didn't feel as though it had that personality. It was a lot more stricter and a lot more harsh. So now we come to the final two. Now I want to talk about Dior Homme here, but I also want to talk about Narciso Rodriguez Bleu Noir for him. Now in my mind, these two are very similar, and I actually see them as good as each other. But let's talk about Dior Homme. The first time I smelt it, I was not impressed, and I did slowly fall in love with it, and it was the fragrance of my early 20s, especially for going out clubbing. Hiro Yokozuna, who was one of the early fragrance influencers of the Fragcom, said, "This is my whore fragrance." And he also, actually said Dior Homme Intense was his whore fragrance, but that collection, Dior Homme Intense, Dior Homme Sport, these are my whore fragrances. And I completely agree with him, but I don't think that has to just mean sexual. I think it means like you're a whore for life, as in you want to experience everything and anything, even to your own detriment. You want to just, you've got a insufferable appetite for life, and you want more and more and more. And that's what Dior Homme is kind of for me. It's stylish and, it's sophisticated, but it's got this edge to it. It's got this absolute desire that nothing is enough. You know what I mean? Like, you just want more and more and more. And that is Dior Homme to me, and Dior Homme Intense. But there is also a romanticism about that as well. Dior Homme Intense, Dior Homme Sport, Dior Homme Cologne, they're all very sexy fragrances. They're all very romantic fragrances, and it's difficult to construct something like that. Difficult. And Francis Kurkdjian, I love him, and Lamel's amazing, but I think that Francis Kurkdjian's fragrances, in general, are very sensible. He has a very sensible nose, and everything's lovely and is in the right place, and I think that's why he gets a lot of work, and I think that that's why he does very well, because his intentions are always sensible, and his intentions are always, let's do the right thing by this fragrance. But Dior Homme was not sensible back in the day when it was released. It was one of the most unsensible fragrances that was released at the time. It was completely against what was going on at the time, with like Chanel, L'Homme Homme Sport, and 1 Million, and to a point Lamel, which still had its teeth and its claws firmly in the fragrance world. It's lost that grip as time has gone, but it was still implanted back in 2005. And Dior Homme, which smelled like a female makeup bag, and with a lot of cream and a lot of vanilla, and this powdery sort of iris nonsense, was just completely out there. But yeah, Dior Homme is a fierce fragrance, the original, a completely fierce fragrance, and it will always be with me. This Bleu Noir by Narciso Rodriguez isn't anywhere near as good, but it's still got that kind of vibe that Dior Homme has, and it feels like Dior Homme grew up and decided to take out a mortgage and settle down with his family. And I really, really have a huge affection for this. Now, this is Bleu Noir Femme, and I really, really am. I'm wearing this more than Dior Homme because I suppose I'm no longer an experienced whore. I suppose I'm, settled down and more straightforward. Now we come to the final fragrance. Imagine if I, at this point, pulled out Unisex by Fragrance One, and I did that with a real sincerity and was like, this is actually the best fragrance and the finest fragrance I've ever smelled. That's not going to happen. You know what's going to happen. It's Melissa Imperial. I have wanted to tell you the story about Milice Imperiale for a very long time, and I have to tell you that that time is coming. I have a bone to pick with Rich Mitch, who's a long-time follower and commenter of this channel. He's the one with the duck profile picture. He said to me, bloody hell, Fragrance Brace, George has, he's retired more times than Ric Flair, the professional wrestler. But I haven't. That's not true. I'm only going to retire fully once, and I have laid out the conditions consistently of when that is going to be. It is when I'm going to release the Millésime Imperiale fragrance, the Millésime Imperiale review. But I'm now going to tell you exactly when that's going to be, officially, and without any irony. Season 7 is going to be the final season of The Fragrance Apprentice. It is going to be my farewell tour. I'm going out like John Cena's going out in the WWE. There's actually a lot of comparisons here to professional wrestling, as I adore professional wrestling for multitudes of reasons. But it's funny that has come into my mind, because there's been a lot of professional wrestlers who, the time has come, it's over for them, and they don't quit, they don't stop. And I don't feel as though I'm a broken down veteran who's struggling. I actually feel as though the channel is really doing well, and maybe I could continue it for 2, 3, 5, 10 more years. But I'd rather just leave you wanting more. I'd rather go out on a high rather than outstaying my welcome, and that can happen in creative pursuits, in content pursuits. You can outstay your welcome. And if we were to be very honest with ourselves, and this is no shade to anybody, but there are many channels, and especially fragrance channels, who it's over. You know what I mean? Like they had a great run, but they won't let it go. They can't let it go. They can't evolve. They can't see, the woods from the trees. And they can't stop, because they want to go back to the glory days of what their channel used to be. For me, I feel as though I'm still kind of in the glory days, and I don't know, but I have managed to stay relevant and reasonably popular for all this time, and that's wonderful, and that's something that I'm really grateful for, and I never want to take that for granted. But I'd rather go out on my terms, and I'd rather just go out leaving you wanting more, rather than thinking, Jesus Christ, I wish the Fragrance Apprentice would bloody end. So with all of that in mind, and also, things are progressing with other things that I want to do, film and TV and stuff like that. I was a bit uncertain about certain aspects of that. I am now more certain. But, yeah, I want to go out being the best that I can be, rather than just, fading away. And with that, I am going to announce to you right now that the Millésime Imperiale review will be launched on the 5th of September 2026. That's still over a year away. That's still a long period of time. And in that time, I want to provide you with some of the best fragrance content that you've not just seen ever, but also from me. I want to try and raise the bar. I want to give you the videos that I have been talking about, that I have promised you over these years. The Aventus video being one of them. The Aventus review. I definitely want to do that. There's lots of great videos that I want to do. There's lots of great memories that I still want to have with you, and produce some fantastic, fantastic fragrance content. But on the 5th of September, on my 34th birthday, the 5th of September 2026, I'll be uploading the Millésime Imperiale review. That will be my last. I will be going to Essence next year. That will be my last. I will be doing a top 10 autumn, winter, spring and summer. Those will be my last. And then I will be bringing this fully to a close. There are a couple FAQ questions, I guess. I want to answer a couple of questions that you may have on your mind. No, I will not be finishing as the Fragrance Apprentice, and then Dov Laszlo will be taking over. You know, that's kind of a joke, but seriously, that's not going to happen. The channel will come to an end. There will be no more videos after the Melissa Imperial video. But the main question some people have asked is, why? Well, apart from the fact that I want to end this, you know, on good terms and make it so that you know, I don't outstay my welcome, other people have said, well, you stop that and then you just start uploading, you know, videos about films or whiskey or other things that you're passionate about. And whilst that sounds good in principle, the reality is a lot more damaging and filled with dismay, in which nobody would win. So the way the algorithm works is simple. This is a fragrance channel now. It will never not be anything else. There are certain channels that manage to pivot, but that's very rare, 1 in a million. You don't want to do that. Because what will more likely happen is this. I start uploading, you know, videos about films or, you know, TV or whatever, and then the algorithm goes, what's going on here? I thought this was a fragrance channel. So it will keep putting film and TV stuff out to fragrance fans, and that will have mixed results, to say the least, because most of you will just, you know, you just see me as the Fragrance Apprentice. You know, I do the film stuff and the TV stuff, and I do this, a bit of this and a bit of that, but, you know, I'm the Fragrance Apprentice to you. Another professional wrestling example. I'm a huge, huge fan of CM Punk. Love that guy. Love CM Punk. Probably my second all-time favourite wrestler, behind The Undertaker, who was absolutely my favourite. I loved him in AEW. I love him in WWE, and if he was ever to come to town or whatever, I'd pay a ticket and I'd go and see him. That man has also written comic books. He has also starred in films. I have not seen any of them, and I've not read any of them, because as much as I love Phil Brooks, the guy behind CM Punk, he is just CM Punk to me. And that's the only context I can fully see him in. And although some of you, I will be George M. Atkinson, to most of you, I am under no illusion that I am the Fragrance Apprentice. And I won't be anything else to you. And that's okay. And I hold no resentment towards that. That's just how it goes. So if I started to do the film, TV stuff here, the algorithm would get confused. And then it would also be like, I think this is a film channel now, and then it would stop pushing the older fragrance content, the legacy fragrance content out. And then nobody would win, because the algorithm would be completely confused. Is this a fragrance channel? Is this a film channel? Is this a fragrance channel and a film channel? And in the end, the whole thing, you know, collapses in on itself. So I'd rather just be consistent. This be a fragrance channel. There'll be some film stuff here and there that I'll implement, and, you know, I'll be cheeky and try and do a few things and add a few things that I'm doing as well. You know, I'm doing a brand new short film later this year, fully funded. It's going to be great. If you want to see, you know, that, something I'm very proud of, you can watch that. That's fine. But I understand this relationship. You know what I mean? I understand that you're here for the fragrance content mostly. And so when the fragrance content ends, I'd like the channel to be left alone and to... sounds a bit morbid, but to die with dignity. But it won't ever really be dead, because the videos will always be here. So these have been the 12, 13 fragrances that I've enjoyed and that I've loved over the 15 years of collecting that I've done. Obviously did 10-10, you know, 10 fragrances, 10 years of collecting, because it was just a much better title algorithmically. But I hope that you've enjoyed the journey so far, and let's take the last chapter of this journey together, in which I'll be talking about brand new fragrances, brand new experiences. I hope that you'll enjoy Season 7. It's going to be a wild, wild ride, and you're going to see some of the most unhinged, crazy content you've ever seen from me, and you've ever seen from any fragrance content creator. You have my word on that. Let's do this together. Thank you. Bye for now.